Hi, I'm Jason Stahl, editor of Body Shop Business. Today's body shops are looking for ways to increase productivity, save money, while at the same time improve quality. Sometimes a review of how some of the basic processes are performed can lead to significant improvements. Today, Tim McKinney, Senior Application Engineer from Evercoat, will provide an in-depth review of the basics of mixing, applying, and sanding body filler and putty to help ensure a quality foundation for automotive paint. I thought you had to remove the paint before applying body filler. Is that true?
Well, not necessarily. So what we're going to do for this particular scenario is I'm going to prepare this in the middle. I'm going to sand it with 80 grit, but not take off all the paint. I'm going to just go down to the factory primer and factory e-coat, and I'm going to feather edge this with 180 grit. One of the biggest benefits we have for our products is we're talking about using a premium resin that can adhere to a wider range of substrates, and it will actually stick better to a finer sand scratch. So we don't need to take it down to bare metal. That's kind of a misconception that you had to do that with the old body fillers. Well, you kind of did back then, but the resin structure on these products is totally different nowadays.
That goes back to the grinding we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about grinding from another scenario where over grinding can create more of an issue for pinholes. So, for repair like this, a lot of times the go-to product might be to start with the grinder. You're actually doing more harm than good to the substrate itself, because what if this were aluminum? So what I'll do on this is I'm going to start in the area here. I'm going to sand with 80 grit just to kind of take off for the deeper areas. Say if I did have to do a stud in the middle or do some hammer and dolly work, and then I'm going to feather edge the outside of it with 180 grit to get it prepared for the Rage Ultra. Now apply the product, and then we're going to sand it with 180 grit. That way we're really only going to be doing 180 grit for the majority of the preparation and sanding. It helps to simplify the process, speed up productivity, and we're going to eliminate the deep sand scratches outside the perimeter of the repair. So I'll go ahead and get started here.
Okay.
Once I start to see that I'm starting to get through the paint, that's when I want to stop, because I don't want to sand it too aggressively with the 80 grit and start to expose that metal. We do have a corrosion protection with Rage Ultra. It's got a 500-hour salt spray corrosion resistance. But if I don't open up the bare metal, I don't have to worry about the corrosion resistance. What I'm going to do in this process is I'm going to work with the factory corrosion protection on this panel to stick to that and not have to worry about having to replace it. I always say follow the vehicle manufacturer's recommendations. So if they say that they don't want that substrate for that particular vehicle sanded beyond that coarse of a grit, so say it's an aluminum vehicle and the manufacturer says we only want as coarse as 80 grit, well then we need to start at 80 grit or finer. We don't want to go any coarser than 80 grit.
Right.
So now I've got it sanded with 180 grit. But the next step I look at is when someone would try to apply the product over top of something like this. There's still some dust on this, as you can see. So if you try to apply body filler over dust, well, it's extra air. Now you got to wet the surface while you're incorporating the dust into the product. So blowing it off with the clean compressed air, best option for this. We'll just go ahead and wipe this down with an alcohol wipe. The reason I like using an alcohol wipe is because the alcohol is going to flash off. It's not going to leave any kind of layer of film of solvent over the top of the repair area. It's going to flash off pretty quickly. All right, so I've got it all sanded down. So next I'm going to mix up my product, and I'm going to go ahead and put it onto the repair here real quick.